so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us in the Caprock Writers and Illustrators Alliance. Our very first meeting since we had our launch party back in February. Thank you, pandemic. We're so excited to have S.J. Dahlstrom and Cliff Wilke here. They're both author and illustrator, giving us a really unique view of how you can create a series using both talents. Let me just give you a few notices about our group. We are, this is, like I said, this is our very first meeting since we came back. We are recording this video, this meeting, so that people who didn't feel comfortable coming. We also have a bunch of members that are from around the country that joined, so we're able to provide a video. So we're very excited to be able to do that. Your membership has helped us create this organization, so if you're interested in joining, please consider that. We are counting your annual membership the day we can be back a little bit more normally, so if you join now, it's free until we start that year. So it's only $40. It will get you all of the benefits of our membership, and if you have questions about that, Ms. Rogers is here to give us more information. Let's see, next month we have Jodie Thomas will be here live in this room. She is an international best-selling author, New York Times and USA Today. She's also a local legend, and she'll be talking about creating inspiring her publishing journey. So we're super excited about that. On October 10th, right here in this room as well, we'll have Laura Drake, who's a Romance Writers of America award-winning author. She's going to do a little bit more hands-on, teaching us the craft of writing, how to become a better writer. So that'll be a lot of fun. If you're interested, we had a Battle of the Bards writing and illustrating contest that wrapped up last month. If you were following along and voted or still haven't figured out who won, please go to our website, caprockwriters.com, and we have all the winners. We've got lots of different categories that we put up for the illustrators and the writers, so please join over on our website. We also have all our upcoming programs and lots of other information for you all. Let's see, and in 2021, we're going to start having a board of directors. So in December, we're going to do elections and that kind of thing. So stay tuned. Once we figure that out, we'll share that with you all. And if you're interested in being on the board or being part of our group in a planning capacity, please let us know. Before I introduce our guests, does anybody have any questions? Okay, good. I have answers ready. Okay, so we have here S.J. Dahlstrom and Cliff Wilke. S.J. is a fifth-generation Texan. He lives and writes in West Texas with his wife and children. His series, The Adventures of Wilke, has won the Will Rogers Gold Medallion 3 times and been nominated 3 times for the Lamplighter Award. His fourth book, The Green Colt, won the Wrangler Award from the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum and was a Spur finalist from the Western Writers of America. His 6th book, Silver Valley, was released in January of this year. Dahlstrom also teaches creative writing and literature in Lubbock. In his writing and teaching, he draws on his experience as a husband, father, cowboy, and as the founder of Whetstone Boys Ranch. He says, "We should not forget that we have real adventure to offer kids, and if we can have the courage to turn off their machines and screens and take them outside, the strenuous life in this West, that is our Western heritage, is still wild. It does not require zombies, vampires, wizards, or winds." Cliff Wilke is the illustrator of the Well and Good series, and he is a junior high behavior coach and also has taught art at high school, middle school, elementary grade levels. He was also my daughter's art teacher at her freshman year, took her to the state championship and also to a national competition. And now she's going to art school in college starting in the fall. So, he's a great art teacher. Anyway, with all of that said, I'm going to hand the mic over to S.J.
Well, thanks for coming out, folks. Can you hear me without that? No? No. Okay. First of all, I know some of you. I know you, right? Tell me your name again? Jefferson. You just published your first book about Elder Canyon. Congratulations. And I know Mr. Nichols. And I think that'll be my segue into my short piece before we talk about what we do together. about maybe 12 years ago. When did Color Over Prism come out, Mr. Nichols?
2010.
2010. Well, somehow I heard about, and that was your third or fourth book at that point, right?
Second.
Your second book. I was hungry, and I assume everybody else in here is hungry to publish and sell books and get things out there. And I was hungry, and I had my first manuscript done, and I was talking to every author and writer out there. I wanted to get any information I could, and so I called Mr. Nichols and said, "Hey, I've got a manuscript. Would you meet me for lunch?" And we met over at a coffee shop. I don't know, over on 82nd Street somewhere. And he gave me his time. He gave me an hour or two, and probably paid for the coffee. And you talked to me for a couple hours, and you told me a fantastic story. You have a fantastic story of your writing career, which I assume everybody in here knows, but maybe not. Anyway, that's really my whole story, is keep doing what you guys are doing. I was very lucky to find all these great mentors when I was wanting to write. The mentor that made it the biggest difference in my life was John Erickson of the Hank the Cowdog series. I'm sure you guys have heard of Hank the Cowdog. And we became friends really through cowboying. He has a big ranch in the Panhandle, and he always needs cowboys to go up there and risk their neck chasing his cows everywhere. And so we got friends. We got to be friends that way. But he's a Christian believer. I'm a Christian believer. We have a lot of things in common, and so that mentorship has really helped me do everything. But it's finding all those mentors along the way that get you to that next place. You know, I think in a little way, I've maybe helped Jefferson a little bit, some emails and some things. And so, you know, that's really how art works. Is, you know, nobody shows up as a little genius and really good at things, but we have our ideas, and then we find these mentors, and those mentors hand down things to us, and then we take them and we use them, and then we hand them back down. And so that's clearly, you know, the part of what we're doing with Caprock Writers Alliance, is finding friends, finding mentors who share our values. So, you know, that's really my whole story. We're going to talk a little bit about art in the book specifically, but this is the very first Wild and Good book that I clumsily stapled here on the side and put it together. How many of you guys have something that looks like this in your house? I assume everybody has one of these. The Color Over Prism started out this way. And, you know, that's where you start. You don't have a book deal. You don't have a publisher. You don't know what a book deal is. You don't know anything. You just start writing because you have this passion to write. And maybe if you're lucky, you know, it turns into, you know, a book that's out there. But that doesn't always happen. And sometimes you got to throw away about 5 things. How many of you guys have about 5 manuscripts you've thrown in the garbage that aren't any good? You know, that happens to most people as well. You know, I got really lucky. I don't know how I got my first book out there. I'm sure we would all say this, it's nowhere near as good as the latest book, I hope. But, you know, that's the process, and that's what we're all chasing down, I would assume. So I'll let Cliff say a little bit about his history with art, and then we'll talk maybe about some of our pieces as we work together. And I'm just, Nathan is my name. I don't know how many of you guys have pen names. When you get your first book deal, you get to come up with some pretentious nom de plume to put on your book, and so I, you know, wanted to use initials for some reason, but I'm just Nathan as well. And I'm going to give you all a card so you can email me in the future if you have any questions. But we'll talk about the books, and then we'll do some questions next.
All right, I'm Wilke. I wouldn't necessarily say that I don't consider myself an illustrator. I just kind of consider myself more married to Wild or Good. I'm just kind of a bone that has artistic skills, and Nate found me as a young guy and was like, hey, you want to eat? Well, I bet he saw me and just saw like $1 sign versus like $10 signs. But he knew that I had a little bit of artistic skill, and he threw out the invitation to me just to give it a shot and see if something stuck, and it stuck. So here I am, illustrating a book series, and it's something I've probably created the least amount than any other time in my life. I don't know what that is or what that's about. I'm not as hungry as Nate is. I'm not near as disciplined. But if somebody gives me a reason to do something, a lot of times Nate will knock on my door and say, 5 o'clock in the morning and head to the studio type of person. I wish I was, and I'd like to think that I'll get that way very, very slowly in life. But I think my love for art started at a really young age. I had a growth in my foot when I was 4 years old, right before my dad left the country to head to the Gulf War. And it put me in a wheelchair for a few months. And my mom fed me coloring books and cartoons. And I'd sit there in front of the TV and color, just color and color. And I told her I got tired of coloring, and I just asked for paper. And I just started drawing what I saw in the coloring books, and I think that was the start. And then, you send pictures to your grandmother and great-grandmother, and of course they think you're the next Van Gogh. So they would ask me to draw everything else in the world, and I would. And I'm sure it wasn't good at all, but I never had any formal training, really, my entire life until a few years ago. I decided, while I was still teaching art, I decided to actually go learn something. Because I went to school for art education at LCU, and it's just not a knock on LCU, because as a matter of fact, now they actually have an art department, like a real art department, I guess you'd say. But it wasn't really a real art department when I was at LCU. It was more just education with an emphasis on art, I guess. So I wouldn't say I learned a whole lot as far as artistic skill goes, but recently I learned from a master painter, Steve Wilke. Here's a little side note. During this whole 5 or 6 month span that we've been out of teaching and just kind of sitting at home, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I almost feel like I forgot how to talk. I need a dictionary sometimes to refer back to. I'm going to have to learn how to form complete sentences. I'm about to go back to school and be teaching again and interacting with adults and children. I'm going to need to relearn how to talk. I feel like that's where I'm at. But anyway, Steve Coe, brilliant artist, brilliant painter, and I learned so much from him, and it made me realize, wow, I just learned a whole lot, and I still have that much more to learn, which is pretty intimidating. And I really respect you guys for being here. I seem like a wide range of people, and that helps me realize, yeah, I'm going to be learning for a long time, but I'm in good company. I guess that's about it for me, artistically. I guess we might dive into more detail about how Wilder got started and how everything worked out for us.
You guys have any questions so far? Anything we said? Spark any follow-up? Okay, so all you guys, you have a manuscript sitting there at home, and it's in different forms, and I think to be an artist or a writer, you're a dreamer, because it's a big dream, to say I want to get a book out there. Whether it's your granddad's memories of, or my granddad's memories of World War II, or Lessons for Your Children, or this fully formed novel. Mr. Nichols, your writing has been all over the place. You've written some spiritual stuff, you've written some crime stuff. You're writing children's books, right, Jefferson? And mine was children's books. I looked at Barnes and Noble. I was raised in a reading family, and I started having kids. This is my wife, 3 kids right here, and I started taking them to Barnes and Noble when they were, 1 or 2 years old, and I saw that most of the books at Barnes and Noble being published for these guys were full of all kinds of messages I was very much opposed to, and themes and ideas I was very much opposed to. And children's literature is awash in values that aren't my values. Because those books come out of New York, and those are New York values, and that's fine if those are your values, but they weren't my values. And so I said, well, I guess I'll just write the books for my kids that I want them to read. And of course, there were other books, the generation of books that came out from the 30s to probably the 70s. the children's books that were based on animal stories, the children's books that were based on grandparents and families and the outdoors. Those books have largely gone away. And I've got nothing against Harry Potter. You know, there's some good wizard stories out there. I read the Harry Potter, so those are pretty good. But a lot of them have just very, very material that is pushing an agenda that isn't mine and in my book. So anyway, so I wrote the first Wild Good book just about a home trip. And I didn't know anything about the publishing business except little things I would ask John Erickson. And he said, well, you guys go buy yourself a writer's market. How many of you guys have a writer's market? Everybody's got one of those. And he said, you're going to have to do what everybody else is. Do your research. Find the publishers that are doing what you do and start writing query letters. I didn't know what a query letter was. All of you guys would have to learn what a query letter is. And before I sent it out, I had the instinct that if I would send along an illustration to go with the book, that maybe that would help cast the vision of the manuscript. And luckily, I had this knucklehead friend named Cliff Wilke, who would probably do it for about $5 and a couple cheeseburgers. And so I said, Cliff, give me a vision of what Wild Good looks like. And I have zero visual art skills. I've studied art, but I can't do any of it myself. All I can do draw is a stick figure. So I gave Cliff the manuscript. I don't know if you read the manuscript. Did you read the first manuscript? You had to do some to get this.
Yes.
Because Cliff can read a little bit. You know, they're very short sentences. Anyway, so he kept up with this. And I was like, that's great. I don't think I told you anything about this, really. I think this was 100% you from the book. And so I shipped this off to, I don't know, 50 publishers, I'm not sure. And lo and behold, I had a few people that were interested in a book deal. You know, I just got lucky, I don't know. But I think some of it was the fact that I put a vision in the publisher's mind of what this could look like. I wasn't saying, you know, Cliff Wilke has to be the artist or anything. I knew I didn't have anything to negotiate with. And I was able to sign a contract with a really nice publisher in Philadelphia called Dry Books. So, you know, that's the very first ethos of that. This first little manuscript I printed up, and I think I gave to my kids for Christmas about 10 years ago. You know, there's that first illustration. There's only one in there. It's not even the right title. And when it came out, but it was that first little piece of a dream. So anyway, the Philadelphia guys buy the contract, or they buy the manuscript, and they say, what about that illustration that you sent? And I said, well, I just had a buddy do that. And they said, well, you want to do some illustrations? And I said, sure. And I said, what about giving this guy Cliff a shot to do it? And they said, okay, we're not going to make any promises, but have him kick out a few more drawings. And we kick out a few more drawings. And so Cliff has, he has a drawing for every chapter of the books. There's the first one. It's just a gun barrel. It's probably not, it's a good drawing. It may not even be a good idea, but there's a gun barrel there. And so every chapter now, we're about to do the 7th book, has a Cliff Wilke drawing. Philadelphia has hired him all these years since then, based on that. The cover design comes from a different place. And this is the second cover of these books have had. But that's how it all started, with just a little vision. And this drawing wasn't even used. They didn't want to use this drawing, but it was the one that kind of got the ball rolling, which I think is kind of neat. But it's all that idea of just, you got to put yourself out there and dream big dreams and pull all these talents around you, and you know, sometimes something like that. Cliff, do you want to say anything about this first drawing or whatever it's asked?
Yeah, what I think is interesting about this one, I can't remember honestly if he gave me a passage to look at or not, but I do remember some of the wording that inspired me for this one, and it was, I think, I'm trying to remember word for word. I think it was that Wilder found a finger of woods to sit in, and so it's just very visual for me. I just imagine like these trees just kind of cradling and these fingers sticking up, just cradling Wilder as he sat there, and kind of nature was his nurturer and kind of kept him safe. And it's not a great drawing or anything, but it's and coincidentally, that's the only illustration never been used in a Wilder book, but that's the only Wilder illustration, I believe, that exposes his face. but it's never been used in the book. And I guess we kind of had wanted to keep it that way because, like, I'm not a trained artist or illustrator, and so when you kind of create a face, especially kind of a growing, well, he's stuck in a little bit of a time capsule, right?
Well, he's been from 12 to age 13.
Yeah, so a lot of adventures for a 12 and 13-year-old boy. So he's somewhat in a time capsule, and you just have to stay consistent. And I guess that's just a decision that we stuck with, was not to make the focus the face, but more just the character and the silhouette of the character, I guess. But if you look through the books, and it's pretty interesting going from book 1 to book 5 and so on, that the pictures kind of evolve. And I've kind of changed what I've done a little bit, and it probably most of the pictures from the first book were just from imagination, but now we've kind of got it narrowed down to where Nate will give me a specific image, like this is what I want, and that speaks to the experience that goes into the books, the personal experience, because most of what happens in the books is probably personally documented by Nate, and, either in writing or behind a lens of the camera.
Something that's good about Cliff, all of you have worked with designers or publishers or illustrators at some point, and if you can find somebody that's humble, it really goes a long way. Have you ever worked with an arrogant artist? Or have you ever found yourself to be an arrogant writer from time to time? It makes things really, really difficult. And because Cliff and I have had such a good friendship, we could go into this, because I'm trying to make some money here, right? There's money on the table. This isn't just two buddies hanging out. This isn't one of the ways I feed my family. So if you can do that and not have your ego all wrapped up in it, you can do a lot of great things. I'm showing this drawing because this is one Cliff worked on really hard. This is one of the inspirations for the series is a man I knew in Montana when I lived there. And we did this portrait, and I thought it was so great. Cliff probably did it 2 or 3 times, and then my publisher said they didn't want to use it. And so you've got to be humble to be able to have your things rejected, right? I mean, all of us know about rejection because we're writers and we're artists, but that's something that's been a part of the series from the get-go, is that because we were friends, and I don't think I could have done that with just anybody, have things rejected, and have all the conversations where you spend 10 hours going in one direction, and all of a sudden that direction is a dead end, which we've all experienced, but you've got to have that humility going into it. We're really not going to get anywhere. Will you tell us why you're so humble, Cliff?
Why I'm so humble? I don't know. I suppose my humility comes from the fact that I'm not a super disciplined artist. I've been really experimental my entire life, just trying all different kinds of art, and didn't ever find a focus. But until later in life, and now I'm just now starting to. I picked up a paintbrush, and painting is my passion. But now I need to buckle down and learn about it. And I feel like I've just been perpetually, whatever. So I think that's where my humility comes from.
This is another humble moment for both of us. This is from book 4, The Green Cult. But you can see here, there's a big difference in these 2 drawings. One of the horse has a halter, and one of the horse doesn't have a halter. And I had Cliff do this drawing with the halter because I wanted to write, because I love horses. This is a horse I own. The whole book is about this horse. And Cliff did it about 4 times. But the scene, there's no halter on the horse, because that's the whole point of the story. This is when we first meet the horse. And so after doing it 4 times with the halter, I finally said, oh yeah, it's not supposed to have a halter. So anyway, being a writer, being an artist, you do a lot of work for free in a sense, while you're getting it right. But again, if you have a relationship and you're humble, you can make it through those things. On some of these covers, I don't know if you guys ever had a cover designer do something for you in Philadelphia or someplace that's 2,000 miles away. And they're not from Texas, right? And they have a whole separate vision for a guy on a horse. When a West Texan says, I need a guy on a horse, and you tell them we need a guy on a horse. And two totally different things happen. I'm sure you guys have experienced that. And that's been the great thing about being able to work with Cliff. If I would have done all the chapter drawings with somebody in Philadelphia like we did the covers, it would have taken 10 times longer. But the fact that Cliff and I come from the same culture, pretty much have the same experiences in life, and we can sit there and talk and criticize each other, not have our egos in the way. We can get so much done so fast. But when we're doing the covers, everything is email to email from somebody with a completely different culture, and things were incredibly slow. Like the first one of these, Wilder was on an English saddle, and there were big Rocky Mountain peaks for the Caprock. You know, the whole book was about the Caprock and about a panhandle cowboy. You know, anybody that's seen anywhere close to here knows there's no snowy peaks here. But, you know, those are the kind of things you have to work through if you're working with an artist that doesn't know anything about you. So if you can, you know, if you can buy local, you might say, that's been a huge benefit. You know, we got to purchase live skills locally. You know, one of the most fun things we did, I assume all you guys are book nerds, and your houses are full of books, and one of the neatest things about children's literature is maps, our maps. Do you have a map in your book, Jefferson?
No, I won't.
As long as you're on the same planet.
Very
Some
well,
publishers-
first it's supposed to be out.
That's good. Some publishers give authors no say in even the title. You know, they can take any, you know, depending on your contract and what you've negotiated. So you've got to be ready for that. I've been lucky to have a say in, you know, in some of mine, but yeah, it's difficult. One of my best stories on that, and those questions is Fitzgerald, when he wrote The Great Gatsby, he was terrible at covers, he was terrible at titles, and his two titles he wanted for The Great Gatsby were The Road to West Egg and The High Bouncing Lover, which are absurd titles. You know, The Great Gatsby is obviously great, but you know, it makes the point that authors may be good at writing the text, but may not be so good at the other, and so we get on the same planet, but then we, you know, trust your art department on some level too. As long as there's not snow-capped peaks in West Texas. Okay, yeah, English saddles.
I understand that Wilder is a composite character from a lot of different children, but how much of his adventures and experiences do you incorporate from your own childhood?
Well, everything Wilder does is something I've done. You know, even if it was an adult adventure, like the trip to Colorado. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, he's probably 90% me. I mean, there's big chunks of him that are me for sure. You know, the parts of you delete and you don't want to print and you make it a little bit better, I guess. But hopefully you let those bad parts of you as well. And I would think, and you guys feel free to disagree, but most writers, their best stuff is writing stuff they know the best. You know, when they're writing about themselves and the heartaches they've had, you know, that's where your best stuff really always comes from. A good writer can, you know, they can create something crazy, but to really sell it and connect, you know, we're talking for years and years and years. Usually you're writing out your heart. And so certainly Wilder gets a big piece.
I just want to know what you're working on now.
Well, you know, the most boring thing in the world is for somebody to say, I write poetry too. That's really my passion is poetry. And I write poetry because I love it. I love to read poetry and write poetry. And I think poems help you polish your prose. Because with a prose, when you're writing a novel, you can put all this junk in there. And sometimes it's good, but with poetry, you've got to really condense and condense and condense and condense. And so I love poetry as a practice for that. These are just little self-published pieces that sometimes I read and gather stuff. So I'm always writing poetry. This summer I wrote the 7th Wilder Good Book, and that's sold. It'll be out next summer. But I also have a novel, a coming-of-age novel that's based on me about when I lived in Montana, and that's in a publisher's right now. I don't have a contract on that, but it would be more of a guess it's an adult. So I've got other things out there. Now, one thing with John Erickson, he's educated at Harvard and University of Texas, very smart guy, he's written all over, and he's published about 20 other books, but you know who reads them? Nobody. Because he got really successful with what? Hanging cow dog. And so when you're really successful in one thing, that's what people want to hear from you. And so I hope to be able to write Wilder Good for a long time. Book 7 may be the last one, who knows? So I love Wilder Good, just like John loves Hanging Cow Dog, but usually authors have other interests as well. What genre is your new book?
Pardon?
What genre is your new book? You've had crime, you've had religious.
Espionage, human and drug trafficking.
Okay, so a little bit like some things you've done as well. So I have lots of interests, but the world may never see the rest of them because it's got to pay for itself, and the world may just want Wilder Good. Yes, ma'am.
Are you using illustrations in your poetry?
No, I haven't done any illustrations.
Get busy.
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll send some poems for illustrations.
It'd be a whole lot easier to read.
Yeah,
Just a poem.
yeah. I put little covers on these books, but no, there's no illustrations.
The book that you're writing, the adult, is that a standalone? Are you creating a series from that? Are you using your S.J. Dahlstrom name, or are you changing to another?
Well, everything I publish, I guess, is under S.J. Dahlstrom, but it'll be the same name, but no, which is the same. And I've got some people interested in it. They may not
Okay.
buy on it, but that's what we do as writers. We write things down. Every now and again, we sell things and stuff like that.
What advice would you give a starting out writer? And I'm going to ask you the same question for an illustrator.
Well, the advice I would give is the same thing you're going to get any book you read on writing, and what John Erickson told me 15 years ago when I said, I want to be a writer. And he said, that's great. Do you write? Oh, not that much. He said, well, the difference in a hobby and a job is a job you go to a specific place at a specific time for a specific time period. That's a job. And if you want to be a writer as a job, you better do that. A specific time, a specific place for a specific time. And until you're willing to do that, then you're just, a grad student that wants to be a writer, go to Mexico and sit on the beach and write their big novel. And so, well, it sounds good, yes. But that's not where novels get written, right? Novels get written by getting up at the same time and going to a certain place and banging out 1,000 words or 2,000 words, right? I'm touching that door, and I ain't searching the internet until I've been here for 3 hours, And so that's the advice. Get out there and do it. Bang out the words. And I think it's true, for an artist as well. And you can answer after you.
I was just going to say, William Faulkner said he was inspired every morning at 9 a.m.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And anybody that's written any number of material, no, that's where it comes from.
And I wish I could say, I already have told you that's not me. I wish I could say that it was. This might sound hokey, but my inspiration comes at 9 in the morning. I really enjoy going to school and working with kids, and then after that, I'm kind of tired, I don't, and I'm a night owl, so it makes it tough to go to wake up early and try to tackle something before I go to school. But the truth is the same for illustrators. As far as advice, if you want to do something, then do it. And something Nate has always told me is writers write, painters paint. He's always asking me if I'm painting, and a lot of times I'm like, oh, no. But for somebody that is truly trying to be an illustrator, I don't know the ins and the outs of the business. I got lucky. I had somebody say, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, sure. So I did it, and it's kind of taken off some, and I'm going with it. It's a lot easier to go with something than to try to start something and create on your own. So I can't really take too much credit for being an illustrator, I guess you'd say, other than just hanging in there and doing the work for it. guess nobody will call me a liar. So,
That's the guy you want, humble guy.
but as far as, I guess that's been my wrestling match with my adult life and being an artist is, do I want to be an illustrator? Do I want to be an artist? And then if I want to be that, then I better act like it. And I would say right now I don't really act like it, so I guess I don't want to be that right now. But we'll see what happens. I will forever be married to Wilder as long as any publisher will have me tag along. So we'll see where it goes from there.
And maybe some poetry.
Yeah.
We just pushed into that. Thanks, Bert.
Sometimes you can get wildly creative
Yeah.
in the last few hours that you've got a deadline. It depends on what kind of personality.
Oh yeah, no, that's me for sure. That's me for sure. Nate has always given me deadlines. I'm sure knowingly that there's going to be another deadline after and another deadline after. But
You know what, I'm giving deadlines. You guys know this too. In today's world, I don't know if it worked for William Faulkner, but you can't just be the guy that writes the novel and then you do what you want. You have to be in the business of publishing, giving deadlines and managing things and following things up and doing your marketing. And obviously that's what you guys are doing here, but there's so much more to it than just writing the book. You've got to be involved in all those different ways, which is good if you love it. I mean, it's a good problem to have. I got a book out there. How do I market it? A lot of people would like to know that problem. So,
and I mean, we're friends first, but I try to respect, and he doesn't really talk to me that harshly, but I know when he's serious, and I know when it's like we're just discussing things. So I don't take anything personally, and I think sometimes he treats me like my wife, like we're supposed to be there at 6 o'clock, or we have to leave at 6 o'clock, when really that's not true. But it's just to make sure that we get out the door at 6 o'clock.
Jefferson.
Shall we willing to speak to some of the challenges that you had originally working with each other? Were there things that y'all had to work out over 6 books? I know that maybe I don't want to press that.
Well, I don't really think we've had any big challenges other than, because we were friends for 5 years before that. And I think, Cliff and I, we have a spiritual friendship, so I mean, we've gone to church together and prayed together, and he's been in my home and knows all my kids. And so we had more than just a buddy relationship. And so I don't remember having any big problems, And I guess at the children's home, I was a little bit Cliff's supervisor. So Cliff knew me in a supervisory capacity, I guess, in our other world. And so I don't know if that's at all, but we both love art. We both love storytelling. Like, I'm not a visual artist at all, but Cliff and I, we've been to art museums in New York together, all different places, and we text each other pictures. And so we're discussing art, thinking about art all the time. And so I think this is just kind of grew out of that. I really love what he does. He's a painter. When he's not doing this, he does big pieces. He's got several pieces that doesn't do with water good in our home. And so I guess I've just been very lucky. I don't know that we've had anything big. How about you, Jefferson? With your illustrator, who was your illustrator? Oh, this guy right here? And did you guys have any big fights?
No, I mean, we haven't had any fights. I think what I've realized is...
Were you guys buddies before?
Yeah, we've known each other for 5 years. I used to live up in Tampa, and that's where we were.
Okay.
I think I've just kind of learned while we've been doing it that I don't communicate at all as well as I need to. Like, did you have to change the way you communicated for your illustration? Because I know what you're saying about, like, it gets automatically almost everything I'm saying as far as his art. Like, I try to communicate. I'm not sure how much to communicate because he always comes up with something better than what I even imagined.
I think just be 100% honest. If you start guessing people's feelings, then you're just going to guess wrong. Just be honest, and then be humble after you're honest. I'm always completely honest with him. It's like, bro, I don't like that. We got to do that again. And then if he needs to argue back, then we'll deal with that. But if you go in there kind of being scared to say what you really think about something, yeah, I mean, you're not going to be successful. A funny thing about illustrators, John Erickson's illustrator was Gerald Holmes for the Caprock series. Gerald died last year. But they did 74 books together. And so when I do these drawings, I pick the drawing out and I kind of start the conversation with Cliff, every single one. So I asked John, years ago, I said, how do you pick out the drawings that you want Gerald to do for Caprock? Again, these guys have done 74 books together. And he's like, I don't tell Gerald nothing. I said, what do you mean he'll tell? He's like, he just does what he wants. And so, I mean, it's been such a different response. And of course, they've been off the charts successful. So, who am I to sit here and tell Cliff what to draw? I don't know. That's been our system. And it's been successful, I guess. But, John Erickson and Gerald Holmes had a completely different system that was very successful. And don't tell him I told you this, but I was like, well, did you always like what he did? And, and John said, like, well, I don't think he ever really drew Little Alfred all that well. I was like, well, that's a character that's been around for 30 years. And you didn't one time say, could you draw Little Alfred a little bit differently? He's like, nah. Which is just hilarious to me that he can be so hands-off. But that's the way they did it, and he was very successful. So
2 years in, we've enjoyed it together. It's just nice to hear, from a different perspective, what that looks like. It's a relationship that we didn't know we were going to be off the illustrator.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's a lot of fun. Make an art, see what you care about.
As far as marketing, how much of a hand do you have in that, or does your publisher do all the marketing, or how do you handle this?
Well, that's a conversation we could talk about for several hours. This is what I think about marketing. The best marketing for any product in the world is word of mouth. The only way you get word of mouth is taking care of one customer at a time. And you have to build a business. And so, yes, there's internet and social media and really good design and advertising campaigns and all that. And very few publishers are going to pay for that. Very, very few. If you're J.K. Rowling, if you're in that top tier, they're going to spend $50,000 on your new book. Very few people else are going to get that. The guys in Philadelphia, they do some things, but my marketing plan is taking care of one kid, one family at a time. And that's by giving them myself. When I'm at a reading, when I'm at a school, when I'm at a library, I talk to that kid, and I sign that kid's book, and I spend time with them, and I make those fans one person at a time, and that person tells somebody else. And those aren't, I'm not trying to trick the kid into just going to tell somebody else, but it's really taking care of that one person at a time. And when you do that, I think the marketing begins to pick up. As far as social media, different things, I'm sure she can tell you a lot more about that. I've chosen not to do any of that, and I'm not saying that's the right advice. I just have my personal opinions about social media. And really what I'm doing with my series is about getting kids outdoors and being wilder. And I've always thought social media, I never wanted a kid to go home and say, I need a Facebook account so I can go to the Wilder Good page. I always wanted a kid to say, I read a Wilder Good book, I want to go get a new fishing pole or a new knife or a new dog. And so that's where the way I've gone. Could I have sold more books if I was doing it different? I don't know. But I'm having a blast and trying to take care of one kid, one family at a time. And that's what John did. John was marketing books. The first thing Caprock was self-published in 1983. And how did he get where he is? To think about self-publishing in 1983, how do you get your message out? He went to feed stores and rodeos and talked to people and made them laugh. There was no other, secret button on the internet where if you did this on Facebook and this on Instagram, all of a sudden all these followers show up and you make lots of money. Just take care of people. That's my, I don't know if that's any good for you, but that's what I do. You need good design, you need good art. You've got to be a good writer, you've got to have good stories to tell. But after that, just be a good person, take care of your fans.
So your book came out in January, end of January,
basically nothing. I had 5 really good signings set up in the spring. That's when a lot of schools have budget money for children's authors, that and their school year is kind of done, so that they bring in authors. And I had 5 big signings set up that I would sell books and present to schools and libraries, and so all those were canceled. So pretty much, you know, I really didn't do very much. I mean, we've had reviews. I have a newsletter, you know, and I have a mailing list and those kind of things. But and as far as me getting out and being able to do my marketing plan, which is meeting people, you know, it all went garbage.
So, you're
But
probably.
I'm not complaining, because a lot of people have had a much harder time, you know,
Yeah,
than I have had. So.
But for came out the end of January, were you able to get some of the press that you wanted and the attention on the book? It's in a series. You've got readers that have read the other ones that kind of carry through to the next one.
Yes, I guess there's been about 3 really good reviews that have come through so far. But that's all on my publisher. You know, they send out the galleys 6 months in advance of the book coming out. The galleys, of course, are the free copies, and there's, I think, 3 pretty good, pretty usable reviews so far, which isn't great. That's just, you know, you send things out, and sometimes when you have a series, people say, well, we're not going to review every one of the series, and so you do your best. But hopefully you've established an audience.
Yeah.
People are buying the book regardless of what the reviews are, because they know the character and the name. So I guess my advice probably isn't really good. If I was having a new standalone coming out, that would be, you know, I could probably tell you more about it. The 6th book in a series, either you've caught people by then or not, and so you have those repeat customers.
Well, and I think with children's books, they're a little bit different because that relationship is really important to impress upon kids, and your whole theme of being outside and cowboy and all that stuff is very unique in the market. You know, and that to have that relationship with you makes it even more of a special gem that they know the author and they had a conversation. So I hope after pandemic when you get back out and can do some of the signings and things that I think that's like your bread and butter.
Yeah, I had a kid send me a photo. You know, one of the best things is you get a fan letter, they're all from kids, and they can do that through the internet. And they sent a photo of their room, and on their back wall there was a big Hank the Cowdog poster that said, warning, you know, this ranch is depicted by ranch security. They had that on the wall, and then they had a Wild and Good poster right next to it. And that was kind of a nice, you know, that's kind of your paycheck. You know, when you're writing for kids, at least, I guess, is that kids are maybe listening to your message.
I play a small part in this, but I had a cool experience. I recently moved, well, a year ago I moved to Abilene. I was teaching here in Lubbock, and now we live in Abilene. That's where my family is, and it's where I teach now. And I'm at Wilke East Junior High, which Wilke is kind of like Friendship is here. It's just like on the outskirts of town. But it was really neat. I went to the librarian and I had this stack of books, and I was like, hey, you can't have these. These are mine, but you should order these. I know she had sent out like book recommendations because she was trying to spend budget money. And I was like, you should order these from the library. And she was like, okay. So she said she would, and then I just went looking through the shelves, and I found they already had 3 Wilder Good books, and they had them for a few years, and I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. But that was probably the coolest experience I had.
Any other questions? Thanks for coming out. My card is up here, and my email is on the back. You know, everything that I know, which isn't very much, I receive from people like Mr. Nichols and John Erickson, and, you know, so, you know, I know Jefferson and I, we talk on email, so feel free to get my card and shoot me an email anytime. I may not have the right answer, but I'll certainly share what people have told me and what I've tried. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, you guys. It's been really fun just to hear all of your, you know, the friendship that started all of this, and that you rely on each other for the work ethic, and just all of the brainstorming that goes into this. It's really cool to hear that you went on a trip together and that inspired the story. I mean, how fun for you, Cliff, to part of that. Part of the adventure that turns into a book and then to be able to illustrate that. So really appreciate y'all coming out. It's wonderful to have you all here. We're going to have this video up, so if you want to check it out. We need to make sure you guys open your emails. That's how we're going to share this video. So if anyone that isn't on our mailing list, there's a sheet at the front. If you could just put your name and your email, it would be really helpful if you could add us as a contact in your email, because some of these email systems play games and they hide your stuff. So we don't want our emails to be lost. And make sure you come out next. This thing is not having. Make sure you come out next month. It'll be right here as long as the Garden Art Center is open, and that's based on the city of Lubbock. So if they have another shutdown, hopefully they won't. But it's been wonderful. Now these guys will be here for a little while longer. If you want to come up and ask questions, we're also going out to lunch somewhere. I think if you guys want to come, you guys can join us too. So we'll hang around if you need to figure out what it is. We don't know, but. Thank you so much for coming. And I never introduced myself. I'm KJ Waters, and I'm part of the Caprock Writers Alliance. We've got several folks here that are part of the group. If you have any questions about what we're doing and how to get involved, we would love your help. And we're trying to build a big community. We had a wonderful launch in February, and then everything fell apart. So we're still trying to grow. We're kind of doing all this. If you've got ideas, we're hoping to have a book festival with Mahon Library. We were going to have members get like first dibs on that, but with the pandemic, that's been slowed down. It's supposed to be a big September event, but that's still in the works. We'll be hopefully coordinating with the library system to have local authors, have a table, and invite the whole public. So, be connected in for that and a lot of the other things that we'll be doing. So, appreciate y'all coming out, and feel free to approach any of us for questions.
Appreciate it.